What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I am Reed. I am 27, just an average dude. I've made tons of money mistakes in my 20s, and now I want to share everything I've learned to help you take control of your finances and your life. Today, I want to talk about something that has been on my mind heavy for the last few months, and honestly, it is something I've been losing sleep over. I've done a ton of research. I've crunched the numbers. I've talked to people who own homes and people who rent, and I think I've finally made up my mind about where I stand. So here it is. I've decided to stop chasing home ownership, at least for now, and I am going to be renting and investing my money instead. Let me explain before you come at me. So first off, a little context about where I am at right now. If you've been following my channel, you know I am currently living with my parents, which has been a huge blessing, honestly. It has let me save up a solid emergency fund, pay off some old debt, and actually start investing. But there is a good chance I am getting promoted at my job soon, and with that promotion comes a relocation. I have to move out of state and live on my own for the first time, really, so I've been thinking hard about what I am going to do when that day comes. Do I buy a house like everyone says I should, or do I rent and put my extra cash into the market? Now, here's the thing. Growing up in America, you are basically brainwashed into thinking there is only one path to success. You go to school, you go to college, you get a good degree, you get a high-paying job, you buy a house, you start a family. That is the American dream, right? And I am not saying that is a bad dream. I think owning a home can be an amazing goal, but the problem is no one ever stops to ask if that dream actually makes sense for where you are at in life, especially in your 20s when your career is still uncertain and the economy is all over the place. Let me break down the numbers I ran because this is what really opened my eyes. So let's say I move to this new state and I want to buy a starter home. We're not talking about some luxury mansion, we're talking about a modest 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. Probably built back in the 60s, nothing fancy. In a lot of places in the US right now, that starter home is going for about $400,000. That is just the reality of the market right now. Prices have gone absolutely insane since 2020, with home values up about 42% nationally. So let's say I put down 10%, which is a reasonable down payment, especially if you use first-time home buyer programs. That is $40,000 cash just to get in the door. Then on that remaining $360,000 loan, we're looking at mortgage rates around 7% right now. That is a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage, which comes out to about $2,400 a month just for the principal and interest. But that is not all, folks, because owning a home comes with all these other costs that nobody warns you about when they tell you renting is throwing money away. You got property taxes, you got homeowners insurance, and then you got maintenance costs, which a lot of people call phantom costs. These are the little things that break. Maybe it is a leaky faucet, maybe it is a light fixture, maybe your AC unit dies in the middle of summer, and you got to drop $5,000 to replace it. Maybe your roof starts leaking, maybe the water heater explodes. All of that is on you when you own the place. So when you add all that together, we're talking about $2,400 for the mortgage plus property taxes, plus insurance, plus maintenance. That is probably around $3,200 a month for a very modest starter home. Now, let's compare that to renting. In the same area, I could rent a 2-bedroom apartment for about $1,650 a month in base rent. Add another $150 for utilities and electricity, and we at $1,800 a month total. So renting cost me $1,800, buying cost me $3,200. That is a difference of $1,400 every single month. Now here's where my strategy comes in. Instead of dumping that extra $1,400 into a mortgage, I am going to invest it. I am going to put that money into low-cost index funds like VU, which tracks the SP 500, or maybe some dividend ETFs like SEG. I am going to max out my Roth IRA, and I am going to build a diversified portfolio of stocks and ETFs that actually produce income and grow over time. Let me show you what that looks like over 5 years. If I invest $1,400 a month, that is $16,800 a year. If I get an average 8% annual return, which is pretty close to the historical market average, after 5 years, I have about $103,000 in my investment account. That is capital plus gains. Now compare that to the equity I would build in that same house over 5 years. Here's the thing nobody tells you about mortgages. In the first 5 to 10 years, you are mostly paying interest. Like almost all of your payment goes to the bank, not to your equity. So after 5 years, you might have paid down maybe $30,000 to $40,000 of principal. And that is being generous. Plus, if home prices keep going up, you might have some equity from appreciation, but that is not guaranteed at all. Home prices could stay flat or even drop. We've seen that happen before. So you are looking at maybe $60,000 to $70,000 in home equity if you are lucky versus $103,000 in liquid investments that you can actually access and use. Plus with renting, I have zero maintenance costs. If something breaks, I call the landlord. If the AC dies, I am not paying $5,000. If the roof leaks, I am not paying $10,000. That is all on the property owner. Renting also gives me flexibility. What if I move to this new state for this job and I absolutely hate it? What if the culture is terrible? What if my boss is awful? What if I get a better opportunity somewhere else? If I own a house, I am stuck. I can just pick up and leave. I gotta sell the place or rent it out, which comes with its own headaches. But if I am renting, I can finish out my lease and move wherever I want. Flexibility is huge in your 20s because your career is still developing and you don't know where life is going to take you. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You are probably saying, but Reed, rent can go up every year. Your landlord can raise your rent by $100 or $200 a year, and that is money you can control. And you are right. That is a risk. But here's the thing nobody talks about. The costs of owning a home also go up. Property taxes go up every year. Insurance premiums go up. Maintenance costs go up because everything gets more expensive. So it is not like buying a house locks in your housing costs forever. Both options have increasing costs over time. At least with renting, I know exactly what my maximum exposure is for the length of my lease, and I can plan around that. Another big thing that pushed me toward renting is the state of the housing market right now. Home prices are still at or near all-time highs in a lot of markets. Interest rates are at 7%, which is double what they were just a few years ago. And on top of all that, big investors and big banks are buying up starter homes like crazy. They coming in with cash offers way above asking price and turning single-family homes into rental properties. So regular people like me have to compete with institutional money just to buy a modest starter home. That is messed up, honestly, and it is making an already difficult situation even harder for young buyers. I think there is this idea, especially in America, that wealth is measured by real estate, like you are not really successful or you haven't made it unless you own a piece of property. You could have $800,000 in your stock portfolio, but if you don't have a house to your name, people will look at you like you are behind. That is the pressure we all feel, and it is hard to ignore. But I am starting to realize that wealth comes in many forms. Wealth can come from stock market returns, it can come from dividend income, it can come from compound growth over decades, it can come from having liquidity and flexibility. If I put all my money into a down payment and a mortgage, I am tying up my capital in one single illiquid asset in one location. If I invest in the stock market, I can diversify across hundreds of companies and sectors, and I can access that money whenever I need it. I am not saying I want to be a forever renter, by the way. Let me be clear about that. I definitely want to own a home someday. I think there is value in having your own space where you can paint the walls whatever color you want and hang things on the walls and have a yard and all that, but I don't think my 20s is the time to force that, especially when the numbers don't add up. I'd rather be building wealth through income-producing assets for the next 5 to 10 years and then buy a house when the market is more favorable and when I've got a bigger down payment saved up. And when my income is higher, the way I see it there is no rush. The people who tell you that you have to buy a house immediately are usually the same people who bought their first home when prices were way lower and interest rates were way lower. They don't understand what it is like for someone my age trying to enter this market for the first time. The game has changed and we have to adapt. We can just follow the same blueprint that worked for our parents' generation because the economy is completely different now. Here's another thing I've been thinking about. When you buy a house, you're basically making a bet that home prices will keep going up and that your income will keep going up enough to cover all the costs. But what if the economy takes a downturn? What if you lose your job? What if interest rates stay high for years? If you are strapped by a massive mortgage payment, you have way less breathing room to handle life. Curveballs. If you are renting and investing, you got a lower fixed housing cost and a growing pile of liquid investments that can carry you through tough times. That margin of safety matters a lot, especially early in your career. I also want to talk about the opportunity cost of that $40,000 down payment. That is $40,000 that could be working for you in the market. If I invest that $40,000 in a diversified portfolio and it earns 8% a year for the next 30 years, that money turns into over $400,000 just from compounding. That is the power of letting your money work for you early. But if I put that $40,000 into a down payment, it is locked up. I can invest it, I can use it for emergencies, I can use it to start a business or pursue an opportunity. It is just sitting there as equity in a house, which I can access unless I sell or take out a loan against the property. Now, I know some people are going to say, but Reed, what about the pride of ownership? What about having your own place that you can customize and make your own? And I get that. I really do. There is definitely something special about owning your own home, but I think we romanticize it too much in our culture. We act like renting is some kind of failure, when really it is just a different financial choice. Millions of people around the world rent their entire lives, and they live perfectly happy and financially successful lives. It is not a moral failing to rent. Honestly, the biggest shift for me has been changing how I think about wealth in general. For a long time, I thought owning a house was the ultimate sign that you had made it, but now I realize that true wealth is about having options. It is about having enough money saved and invested that you can make choices based on what you want, not what you have to do. If I buy a house, I have fewer options because I have a massive monthly payment and a ton of responsibility. If I rent and invest, I have more options because I have lower expenses and more liquid assets. Let me be real with you for a second. I am scared too. I am scared that if I don't buy now, I'll never be able to afford a house. I am scared that prices will keep going up and I'll get priced out forever. But I am also scared of making a huge financial mistake that sets me back years. Buying a house that I can barely afford with high interest rates and high prices feels like a bigger risk to me than renting for a few more years and building my wealth through the market. At the end of the day, I am just trying to build a solid financial foundation. I am trying to make smart decisions that set me up for long-term success, not just look good on Instagram or impress my friends and family. The pressure to buy a house is real and it is intense, but I am learning to ignore the noise and focus on what actually makes sense for my situation. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Are you in the same boat? Are you renting and investing like I am planning to do, or did you buy a house in your 20s and how is that working out? Tell me your story, drop it in the comments. I want to know if you are in America or somewhere else, because I am curious if this housing pressure is the same in other countries. Let me know if you think I am making the right call or if you think I am an idiot for not buying while I still can. Either way, I appreciate you watching, and I hope this video helped you think about this decision from a different angle. Hit that like button if it did, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.